I think about penicillin a lot, probably more than is normal for a family doctor in 2026. I think about it because I'm not entirely sure modern medicine has ever quite recovered from it. Now, I want to be careful here because what I'm really not saying is that penicillin was a mistake. It wasn't. It was and still is one of the most extraordinary things our species has ever made. I stood in emergency departments and on ships in rough seas and watched a single dose of an antibiotic pull someone back from the edge. I've given penicillin knowing it would prevent rheumatic fever in a child, not just take away the sore throat. These are real miracles and we should be honest about that. What I'm interested in is something a little bit more uncomfortable. I think penicillin didn't just give us a drug. I think it quietly gave us a habit. And I think a lot of what makes modern patients feel treated but not healed, that's probably the phrase I hear most often, I've been treated but I don't feel healed. A lot of that comes from the habit and not from the drug. So let me try to explain what I mean, and let me start by probably unfairly with myself. In 2017, after a long period of stress, I started getting cluster headaches. I won't dwell on the pain except to say that they're sometimes called suicide headaches, and the name is justified. It's not just a metaphor. People who get them have in pretty non-trivial numbers killed themselves. So this was for a while the center of my life. The standard medical answer to cluster headaches is mostly chemical. There are drugs that abort an attack, drugs that try to suppress the cycle. And as a doctor, I knew exactly what would be prescribed if I were the patient sitting opposite me, because I'd prescribed those things to other people. And yet, for myself, I actually refused them. Partly for medical reasons, and most honestly for philosophical reasons. I didn't want to spend the rest of my working life numbing something I didn't understand. So I started doing what felt slow and a bit embarrassing. I started asking what destabilized my system in the first place, what had changed in the year before the pain started, what kind of sleep, what kind of stress, what kind of life. I tried interventions that worked at the system level rather than at the symptom level. Some of them helped, some of them didn't. I had a long remission eventually, and then my child was born, and my sleep collapsed, and the headaches came back. And over time, with various adjustments, they went away again. Now, the thing I came away with, and I think this is the load-bearing sentence of the entire video, was that I wasn't relying on a cure. I was relying on a model, a way of understanding what destabilized this thing and what restored balance. That's a much smaller claim than I cured my cluster headaches. It's also, I think, a much truer one. And it's the lens I now use probably a little bit too much on the whole of modern medicine. Because here's what I noticed when I went back into clinic. I'm Michael, by the way, family doctor. For nearly 30 years I've been qualified. I've thought about this more than is probably healthy. In 1928, Alexander Fleming, in a famously untidy lab, noticed that a mold had contaminated one of his bacterial plates. And around this mold was a clear halo where the bacteria had simply died. That mold was Penicillium notatum, and the substance it secreted was what would, more than a decade later, through the work of Flore, Chain, and a lot of unfamous people, become penicillin. And when it arrived properly, the world it landed in was almost unrecognizable from ours. Before penicillin, a sore throat in the wrong child could cripple their heart for life. Children filled hospital wards with rheumatic fever, with valves destroyed before they were teenagers. Pneumonia carried off perfectly healthy adults into their 30s. And a simple cut on a finger in the wrong week could literally kill you. And then, almost overnight, in historical terms, a single drug changed the shape of dying. So I want to be very clear about this. Penicillin was, and by any honest measure, a miracle. And modern medicine, antibiotics, vaccines, insulin, anesthesia, the intensive care unit, none of it exists without that kind of thinking. The reductionist mindset. Break the disease down to a microbe or a molecule or a receptor, find a target, hit it, and you have the magic bullet. The trouble, and I think this is what I'm actually trying to say, is that the magic bullet didn't stay a drug. It became a template. Once we knew beyond any argument that a single targeted molecule could rescue a dying person, we started looking for the penicillin of everything. Penicillin for blood pressure, penicillin for cholesterol, penicillin for heartburn, penicillin for mood. And I want to be careful here too, because all of these have their place. I prescribe them. Some of them save lives. I'm not anti-pharmaceutical, and I'd be a very strange family doctor if I were. But notice what happens quietly, structurally, when you start treating every problem as finding the target, find the molecule, press the button. You gradually stop investing in something else. You stop investing in the slow, slightly boring, slightly unglamorous work of understanding the whole terrain that the problem is growing within. I sometimes think of it as a bullet and soil. The bullet is the drug, the procedure, the receptor, the the lab value. It's sharp, it's measurable, it's testable, it's licensable, it's monetizable. And the soil is everything underneath that: the sleep, food, movement, relationships, stress, meaning, the conditions of the life that the disease is happening within. The bullet is in its place extraordinary. The soil is what determines whether the bullet has much to do. And I see this every day: patients on 5, 10, 15 medications, each one carefully aimed at a number or a symptom, each one defensible in its own terms, and the person sitting in front of me is exhausted, inflamed, sleeping badly, eating in a way their body can't recover from, disconnected from their own body. And basically nobody has asked them about that part. Not because their doctors are bad, most of them are very good, but because the system rewards bullets. It's much easier to fund a trial of a drug on one receptor than it is to study the long, messy, multi-arm combination of sleep, movement, food, stress, connection. Bullets get randomized control trials, and soil gets shrugs. And so we end up with a slightly absurd situation, which is that we are, by almost any historical measure, better than we have ever been at treating disease. And a lot of our patients feel anything but well. And that gap between treated and healed is, I think, the gap that the magic bullet mindset created when it stopped being a method and quietly became a philosophy. So what do I actually do with this in clinic? Well, the honest answer is that I try in every consultation that admits it to hold two questions at the same time. The first is there a target here that genuinely needs hitting? Is this a strep throat in a vulnerable child who will benefit enormously from antibiotics? Is this a pneumonia in an older person where delay is dangerous? Is this a blood pressure that if I leave it, it will produce a stroke that I can't undo? So if yes, we treat decisively. But that's what these tools are for, and refusing to use them when they're needed would be its own kind of failure. And the second question is, what's going on in the terrain? What's the soil that this problem is growing within? What is this immune system being asked to cope with that it can't? What's loading the system day after day and giving it no room to adapt? And that part takes time. It takes curiosity. It takes a kind of partnership with the patient that you can't fit into 7 minutes, which is a typical National Health Service consultation. And honestly, I don't always get to that second question. Sometimes the patient doesn't want it. Sometimes I'm the one who runs out of time. Sometimes the answers are uncomfortable for everyone in the room. So I want to be careful not to make this sound tidier than it is. But that's the orientation, and it's not, I want to say again, an alternative to modern medicine. It's modern medicine doing the second half of the job that it largely stopped doing somewhere between 1945 and now. So if I were going to summarize, and this is essentially the version of this that I'd say in a kitchen at midnight to a friend who asked what I actually think medicine should be, it's something like this. It's about trying to understand the underlying reason for a person's problem in the first place. It's not about reaching for medications, and quite often about helping people come off them. It's about asking very basic questions about why this particular person is ill in the first place, and actually improving their health rather than just managing their prescriptions. Penicillin saved millions of children from rheumatic heart disease. It turned sepsis from a death sentence into a treatable illness. It changed human life expectancy. We should be grateful for it, and I am very grateful for it. But somewhere along the way, we confused a powerful tool with a complete philosophy. We started believing that if we could just find the right target and the right molecule, we could outsource health to chemistry. And I don't think we can. I think health lives in the way you sleep, move, eat, connect, recover. I think the bullet has its place, and I think the soil has the rest of it. And I think that the next interesting thing in medicine probably isn't another bullet. I think it's remembering the soil. This is The Accidental Doctor, where we try to use uncommon sense in medicine. Thank you for watching. Please leave a comment below. I try to read all of them, and I will respond to as many as I can. Stay well. I hope to see you again soon. Ciao for now.